Hey, welcome to this episode of Entrepreneur Encounters. In today's episode, I interview Rob Krecek, serial entrepreneur and founder of Power Down. I think you're really going to love some of the things that Rob has to share, and I'm particularly drawn towards his childhood bent to start small businesses. I certainly know that it intrigued me. Let's listen to a little bit of his personal journey.
I just always had an entrepreneurial mindset. Like even when I was a kid, my family lived, we had a pretty big yard. It was like an acre in kind of a rural area, but around my yard was a golf course. And I don't even think my parents prompted me to do this, but I just had opened up like a lemonade stand on the corner of our yard and the golf course. And then I also like collected golf balls and cleaned them up and resold them when I was really young and had a business illegally making CDs in high school, which probably I shouldn't be admitting on the recording, but I guess I just have always been entrepreneurial.
So here's the deal Rob was having an absolute blast. He didn't sit down, write up a big business plan, figure how to do whatever. He found a problem and he went out and started solving it. Whether it's doing lemonade, golf balls, or doing CDs, which I recommend you do legally, by the way. So, what makes it different? When he chased what was fun to him, he had the energy to be able to continue working through it. And I think that's so important. I think Rob may have entrepreneurship in his DNA, but he made use of his surroundings in order to explore that. He wasn't looking for the next big idea. He was having fun. It's one of the reasons at Milwaukee Small Business Coach, we focus on bringing in a large dose of humor. Look, entrepreneurship is hard. Sometimes it's lonely. We can run into some strange situations. And as long as we can laugh about it, it helps put it in perspective and get us moving along in a good direction. So, why did Rob go ahead and decide to start his first business? A lot of us have that watershed why moment. It's important that we decide something has to change. It's not okay for whatever this problem is to continue going along. Let's listen and hear what Rob says his is.
When I was working in the corporate world at Baird, I think it's an incredible company. But for me, I just found out that the corporate world wasn't for me as a person because I just thought I didn't like the structure. I honestly just didn't feel like I was helping people enough. And so I knew that I wanted to go off and do my own thing. And what I did is save up some money at my day job and, enough money to open my first business. And one of my core principles as a human is I want to live life with no regrets. So I don't want to be at my deathbed and wonder what if, like, oh, what if I would have started that first business? And so what I told myself is, look, I have this money that I've saved up and I know that I will regret it on my deathbed if I don't start my first company. Just give it a shot. And I know that I can lose everything, all the money that I've saved, all the time that I invested. But for me, it was still worth it to not have to wonder what if on my deathbed. And, it's been a great journey since then. I just love it. It's to me, it's like the most fun game that you can play is the world of business.
So, Rob wanted to live a life with no regrets. How many of us feel the same? But how many of us talk ourselves out of an opportunity when it comes up? Ideas that are actually going to be amazing, but we let that fear well up within us and really get in the way. How many people wish they pursued their purpose earlier? Look, if we're honest, that's a lot of us. That's part of my story. That may be part of your story. Rob, thanks for having the courage to share that with us. That is so critical. If we can push one thing, know that the fear is going to be there, the uncertainty is going to be there. Allow that to be some energy to drive you rather than be energy to scatter you away. So, shifting gears a little bit, Rob's going to go on to mention starting the business being aligned with his values, with his purpose. That's something I think is important for everyone. Make sure your business is aligned with your values and your purpose. But here's the thing, just because it's aligned doesn't mean it's going to be all roses and puppy dog tails. Let's listen.
Doing entrepreneurship is really freaking hard work. Like there's no substitute for doing something that's difficult because if something is easy, everyone will do it. And so despite what everyone on Instagram wants you to think, it's not easy. There's never going to be a super easy path to entrepreneurship. I had saved about $100,000 of my own money. That wasn't my parents' money or anything, or it wasn't a gift or something. That was my money that I'd saved over about a 6-year or 5-year period actually at my day job. And so I took that money and while I was working this 60-hour week day job on the side, started my first business, which was an anytime fitness health club. I was super passionate about fitness and helping people. I knew that I really loved the business of fitness and I wanted to start my own concept. And so I opened my first business from scratch. And so the gym was, literally it was an old Piggly Wiggly. I was so fortunate to have my dad and my family help build it out. So the business and cash flow break even after about 10 months. During that 10 months, I was in my day job working that while still doing this on the side. So that was an incredibly busy time in my life. Like you're working 80, 90, 100-hour weeks, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. And so as soon as the business became cash flow positive enough for me to sustain my lifestyle, I quit my day job.
All right. Three things stand out to me when I listen to what Rob just had to say. The first one is that he had planned ahead. He had tapped into his own savings. He had actually put some money away so that he had the opportunity to launch a business. We've talked about it before on this podcast, but when we look for that briefcase of money to suddenly show up, we oftentimes get really disappointed. Here's the truth, that briefcase isn't there. Sometimes we've got to produce our own briefcase. That's what Rob did in this circumstance. So if you are even thinking that you might want to do entrepreneurship or start a small business, start trying to put away a little bit of cash now so that when you get going, you have the opportunity to shift over. Here's point number two. Rob said he had to put in a lot of hard work. He was working a full time, 60-hour a week job. And then he opened up the other business where he's probably putting in another 40 hours. So he's putting in 100 hours of work every week in these two businesses, trying to get himself out of the W-2 job and to be full time in his new business. That's why they call it sweat equity, folks. It really is sweat equity. We are putting in some of our blood, sweat, and tears in order to make that work. So I want you to think in your scenario, in your situation for your business or for where you want to go, what are some changes you might have to make? What are some changes with time, your relationship with time? Last piece he hits, cash flow. He says, once we got cash flow positive, I was able to leave my job, his W-2 job, and go start doing this small business full time. Cash flow positive, for those who aren't tracking along, is when we're bringing in more cash than we're putting out. Doesn't matter where the bookkeeper is putting it on your accounts. That doesn't matter. You bring in $100, you're only putting out $99. You got $1 positive, you are cash flow positive. It doesn't always matter how much the number is, but it's really essential that we know where it's coming from and how we can move some of those levers to understand it. So now that Rob has been able to get to his cash flow positive state, he quits his job, he's got the gym going, and he decides to go do something fun. Let's listen.
Then I traveled around the world for a while. I went to Europe, South America, and Central America with a backpack just to kind of get the travel bug out of my system. I did that for about 4 months. And I came back to the United States. I bought my second gym, which is an Anytime Fitness franchise in Arkansas. That was an existing business. And then bought my third gym in Northern Illinois in a city called Cary. So those are existing businesses that I turned around. And then I sold some of those and was able to invest in a cell phone repair franchise called You Break Not Fix. I ended up owning 4 of those franchises all in the Milwaukee area over a 6-year period. And I just recently sold my last one of those last October. And then my 2 businesses since then, one has been a tech concept called Shop Mom and Pop, which is a way to divert traffic away from Amazon.com to small and local businesses to help support local business. And then my most recent business is about helping people improve their mental health and productivity through better technology use and communication. So I guess it's about 8 or 9 businesses in about that many years. I guess I don't think of myself as a serial entrepreneur until you say it like that, but I love just building a new business.
Well, Rob really is a serial entrepreneur. It's clear when you listen to him, he loves doing what he does. He's living in his purpose. And I think you can see that fulfilled. Now, if you remember back, one of the things Rob said earlier in our recording was that he'd managed over 5 or 6 years to be able to save up $100,000 or so. And that's what he used to fund his business. An essential part of every business is figuring out how are we going to raise whatever money we think we need in order to get the business started. Now, I have 2 hints here. The first one, it's going to be with bootstrapping. It's going to be with a lot of our own resources and what we have. And the second one is it probably takes less money than you think. That's right. I said it's going to take less money. And that's because sometimes we envision what's huge when really we only need to start with what's possible. Well, let's listen to Rob as he shares some of his story.
For like the first 3 years, I was like living in super fancy apartments and spending ridiculous amounts of money on alcohol at the bars. And I wouldn't trade most of that for, for anything. But I wish what I had done is like done that for a year or year and a half, gotten more serious about saving. But, I remember like my monthly budget was $4,500 a month before I cut down on my spending. And I was like, this is like kind of a lot. So I'm like, how can I cut this down by 2 grand a month so that I can really start saving a serious amount of money? So instead of going from this living in a really fancy brand new apartment, one of the coolest areas to live on, I rented a room in a buddy's house for $300 a month. Did that for a couple of years. And then I was still driving my Saturn while all my friends were buying Audis, BMWs, and Lexuses. And I didn't have a car. And I just stopped spending as much money at the bars. And so I was able to actually reduce my budget and almost basically cut it in half and take that 2 grand a month that I wasn't spending and put it towards saving for the business. Honestly, I needed every single penny of it. And if I would have done that, the business would have went under because I wouldn't have had enough.
I love that story Rob tells, and it actually mirrors part of my story in a lot of ways. Bootstrapping is hard. You're going to have to say no to some things that previously you were okay with, that you could say yes to. If you want to be able to save up that money, two examples that Rob gave where he went from a one apartment living style to renting out a room in a buddy's house. And he decided not to do a more expensive car and stay with something that was more affordable. To this day, I can still remember the initial payment I had on my car when I got a 1995 Mercury Sable used, baby blue interior. Man, that thing was beautiful. Rest in peace, babe. $216.63 a month. I don't remember any of my other car payments I've had over time or any of my other rent amounts for that matter. But I remember that in my mind because I thought I've spent all this time living as a college student on a budget that is not very big. Why does that suddenly have to change because I go out and have a job now? And with that excess money, I spent time saving that. Now, we may have passed some of those marks, but when we look at it, what are the other opportunities that are in front of us? Going out to eat, what type of other entertainment that we partake in? There may be some things, some places that you choose to shop. There may be some things in your budget that you can work around and find some extra money. It's one of the reasons we put together an infographic at Milwaukee Small Business Coach that says 5 ways to save your cash. There are so many ways that we kind of bleed out cash and we don't pay attention to it. Number one hint, look at all the subscriptions you're paying for. Guaranteed. Look at everything that's automatically paying on your credit card or through your cell phone bill and see if there's not an opportunity there. But you can't just make it disappear and assume that suddenly giant stacks of money are going to start to show up on our bank account. That's just not how it works. You have to be intentional. You have to decide, I'm going to open up a separate bank account, a separate savings account, make it a money market, do whatever. I don't care how you invest it. Take that money and actually set it aside so it's out of your hands. You can't spend it because you know that you have a purpose for it. And your goal ultimately is to invest that money going into the future. And for Rob, the payoff was worth it. For me, I think I'd say the payoff is worth it. It works, but it does take effort and it is work. So Rob goes on to share what he loves about entrepreneurship. Let's listen to what he says there.
I think like a lot of people are saying today, especially, I really do like the flexibility that entrepreneurship provides. I like to take a high level of personal responsibility for things. And so as an entrepreneur, the thing that can be bad, but I also love is that I am the one who ultimately is responsible for everything. Even if whether the business is successful or not, it is all 100% on me. And the interesting thing is then if it's successful, 100% of the benefit can accrue to me. Whereas if I work super hard at a corporation and let's say I provide a ton of value, not a lot of that value comes back to me. And I just don't like that. I want to reap what I sowed to some degree. And I know that's for some people, they're not comfortable with that, and that's okay. I also just know that business, especially now more than ever, is changing so fast. And the reason that I like to get in and out of things is everything is going to be different in 10 years, regardless of what's happening today. A lot of people believe that, like, oh, I'm going to do this one thing for 20 years. There's going to be no business that I can think of that's going to be the same 20 years from now or even 10 years. I just like this continual challenge of figuring something out and learning something brand new and figuring it out as best and as fast as possible. And then once I've figured it out, I get kind of bored. And then I'm like, I need to figure something else out. So it's sort of a blessing and a curse.
Here's the deal. When you decide to step out and become a small business owner, when you pursue the entrepreneurial path, you're going to be taking all the risks, but you also get to keep all the rewards. The rewards are numerous. Sometimes you get to define what they are. You're going to have people who will ask you, why are you leaving the comfort of a good job, quote unquote, good job, and going out to do this? Conversely, you're going to have tons of people come up and say, why don't you go get a quote real job instead of doing whatever it is that you're out there doing? Those people are not your supporters. Do not listen to them. I don't know where we came up with the idea that the only way to be successful in life is to work for someone else, build their dream, and to do it their way. Oftentimes, when we have identified there's an opportunity here, there's a problem to be solved, it should not continue to be this way, and I have been given the skill set and opportunity to fix it, then I ought to go out and pursue that if it fits. I would also say there are folks who just want to be able to do their thing. You could be amazing at their skill, craft, or trade, but you don't know how to build a business around it. And there's no shame about that. That is exactly where we help people at Milwaukee Small Business Coach. And I would also say that there are some folks who decide that small business is not for them. There's no right or wrong answer here. That's the key. However, you do want to understand where you're at and be able to make an honest decision for yourself. A lot of times it's a struggle for an entrepreneur. So I don't want you to always be thinking, should I get a job? Should I not get a job? Should I stay doing this? Should I go work for someone else? That time will come. And I encourage you to surround yourself with support so that you have the opportunity to get some feedback and understand from other people a direction that can be helpful for you. Just like you, I can't do this by myself. I've had lots of people pour into me along the way, and there are two that I'd like to acknowledge here specifically. The first is Kate Halfwasson for doing a lot of the editing and work in order to make this come to life. And the second is Chris Crean, who does our music, both in our intro and our outro. If you like what you're hearing, please like, share, and subscribe wherever you're taking this in. And as always, we have lots of additional resources and insights available on our website at mkebusinesscoach.com. You can find information on our podcasts and on our video channels. So again, thank you for joining me on this episode of Entrepreneur Encounters. I'm Brent Halfwasson, Milwaukee Small Business Coach, and I want to invite Chris to take us out.
Ready to take